2025 has become a stacked year for kart racers. Mario Kart World finally pushed Nintendo's flagship series onto a bigger, wilder scale, while Sonic Racing Cross Worlds surprised everyone by being one of the most polished Sonic racers in years. And somehow, in the middle of those heavy hitters, Kirby shows up and gets in on the action. Kirby Air Riders is the long-awaited sequel to 2003's Kirby Air Ride. What makes its release even more surreal is that it reunited Kirby's original creator, Masahiro Sakurai, with the series after more than 2 decades, even pulling him out of semi-retirement to direct it. Co-developed by Bandai Namco Studios and Sora Limited, the game feels like a passion project resurrected from an era when fans thought a sequel would never happen. Calling it just a kart racer honestly sells it short. Sure, it shares some DNA with Mario Kart, but there's a lot more going on under the hood. The variety on display is impressive, considering how simple the core controls are, and while you can occasionally feel the limits of that simplicity, the game's creativity easily makes up for it. There's something here that sets Kirby Air Riders apart, and once it gets going, you won't want to hit the brakes. So, let's talk about what makes it stand out. Surprisingly, this game has a story. Road Trip is the game's dedicated single-player mode, and it's the one place where Kirby Air Riders actually tries to tell that story. You travel through around 10 different areas, each set up like a branching path. Some forks just offer simple things like stat upgrades or a quick shop, but most routes throw different challenges at you. One moment you're racing, the next you're trying to destroy some cubes. Every so often, a boss pops up just to mix things up. The setup is pretty straightforward, but wrapping all of these challenges in a light story keeps it from feeling like a non-stop string of races. The story itself is fine. After each area, you get a short cutscene explaining what's going on in Planet Popstar and why everyone's zooming around on air ride machines. The main plot centers on an inorganic life form that wants to move freely on its own. It's simple and not exactly emotional, but it does at least give you some context to your journey. And honestly, most players probably aren't hopping into Kirby Air Riders for the story anyway. Mario Kart, Mario Party, even some Smash Bros. Entries have gone years with zero narrative and people still love them. Still, it's nice that Sakurai and the team decided to include a story mode at all, since it gives the game a sense of progression. That said, don't expect to be super attached to it. The cutscenes mention hopes and dreams, but the characters don't really leave much of a mark outside of how they play. If you're expecting something on the level of Subspace Emissary, this isn't that. There's a cool final boss waiting at the end, sure, but most of Road Trip's storytelling feels a bit shallow. At least the gameplay side holds up. On harder difficulties, the challenges can get surprisingly tough, and I ended up replaying whole sections just to figure out the best route or strategy. A full run takes about 2 hours, but it can easily stretch longer if you want to try all the routes or collect every air ride machine. It's not the most gripping story mode out there, but as an extra layer on top of the main game, it works well enough. Masahiro Sakurai described this game as basically Mario Kart, but he is definitely being modest because there is way more going on here than you'd expect. On the surface, the controls look super simple. Your air ride machine moves on its own, and all you really do is steer and drift. Tilting the stick moves you around, hitting A, B, or X lets you drift to charge a boost. It's kind of like Mario Kart, but here the boost is your main way of controlling your overall speed. It sounds basic, but once you actually start racing, the game hits you with way more depth than what you were expecting. And of course, being a Kirby game, inhaling and eating enemies is a big part of how you win. Regular foes can be swallowed and spat forward to knock other racers out of your way. Ability enemies work differently. Inhaling something like a Blade Knight gives you that ability, letting you attack nearby opponents. You can also perform a spin move by wiggling the stick, which lets you purposely bonk into other racers. On top of that, each character has special moves you can unleash with the Y button once you've built up enough energy. These are essential ultimate moves, and they vary depending on the character. For example, Kirby can unleash a flurry of massive sword swings, while Meta Knight zooms forward at high speed, using his signature drill attack to knock out anyone in his path.
Final lap!
When everything starts stacking together, the game asks way more from you than its simple controls suggest. You're managing corners, timing jumps for little speed boosts, deciding if rails are worth hopping onto, and trying not to slam into a wall when the speed suddenly spikes. There are moments where the game feels faster than your eyes can follow. You'll hit a dash panel, bounce off an enemy, fly into the air, land awkwardly, try to boost, and suddenly drift into something you didn't even see coming. It's total chaos, but it's the fun kind. The controls do have their hiccups. Using the same button for both boosting and abilities means you'll sometimes slow down without meaning to, especially when you want to use an ability aggressively. It breaks your momentum because part of you wants to experiment, but the other part knows you're losing speed every time you hit that button. Spin attacks have the same issue. Since you have to wiggle the stick, sometimes you just end up zigzagging across the track instead of actually attacking. A dedicated button would have made things a lot cleaner. And honestly, all the wiggling does make you worry about the Switch 2's thumbsticks. Nintendo's history with stick drifting issues doesn't exactly inspire confidence.
Finish!
What really gives the game its depth though are the machines. Each one has its own quirks that push you into different habits and even completely different strategies. The Transform Star is a great example. Its spin move swaps it between flying and bike-like form, so you're constantly adjusting your playstyle mid-race. The Wagon Star can't use the charge boost, but it's amazing for handling and acceleration. And then there's the Swerve Star, which is amazing in tight corners because it comes to a full stop when charging and blasts off the moment you release it, though it can't steer at all. Once you start learning how each machine behaves, half the fun becomes figuring out which ones fit certain tracks or modes. This depth carries over into the game's 4 modes: Road Trip, Air Ride, Top Ride, and the fan-favorite City Trial. Air Ride is the closest thing to a traditional kart racer, with 6 players racing to snag first place. 6 might sound small compared to Sonic Racing Cross Worlds or Mario Kart World, but the tracks move so fast and stay so tight that the races never feel empty. You're constantly bumping into someone, getting shoved into walls, or trying to squeeze through narrow paths. And when multiple racers pop abilities or special moves at the same time, the whole screen turns into absolute chaos.
Fire!
It's even better in couch co-op. Playing side by side with friends cranks the mess up to an 11. I will say though, it can be a bit harder to introduce to newcomers since there's so much happening in a single race. So be ready to explain a few mechanics before things really click. Top Ride goes the other way and shrinks everything into cute top-down maps. It's simple and easy to play, but it doesn't stick as much as the other modes. It's more of a quick break than something you grind for hours. City Trial is the real star. You can spend hours in it without touching anything else. 16 players drop into a big open map and scramble for stat boosts, hunt for better machines, deal with random events like boss spawns, and sometimes just ruin someone else's run by destroying their ride. Watching someone run around on foot after losing their machine never gets old. All in all, the gameplay manages to take a simple concept and turns it into something messy, and yet manages to give you something that's unique and pretty fun. I've spent hours experimenting with different characters and rides, figuring out the best combos, and diving into modes like City Trial or Air Ride with friends. There's always something happening that keeps you on your toes. The controls have their quirks, and the screen can get absolutely crazy, but that's exactly the point. Once you jump in the chaos, it's hard to jump out. Kirby Air Riders feels right at home on the Nintendo Switch 2. The game uses a UI design similar to Super Smash Bros., which is clean, stylish, and just plain cool. Gameplay-wise, the tracks are bright, colorful, and twist around like full-on amusement park rides, with effects constantly popping off around you. Characters are expressive, animations are lively, and the ability to customize both your rider and your air ride machine adds a nice extra layer of personality. I especially love how hectic it gets when 2 or more players use their specials. You get that perfect what is happening feeling. Split screen is already chaotic, so imagine 4 players all on screen at once. That said, the game runs pretty smoothly, and any frame drops are rare and barely noticeable, which is a huge plus considering just how busy the screen can get. On the audio side, the game absolutely nails it. The sound effects are punchy and familiar, almost like they were inspired by the recent Super Smash Bros. Games. But the music is really where it shines. The game even kicks off with a full-blown musical number.
Soaring high, like shooting stars in the sky.
So, right from the start, you know you're in for something special. The soundtrack blends classic Kirby charm with remixed favorites and fresh new tracks, and each one fits its stage perfectly. For example, Siberian Highway synthwave beats are intense, fast-paced, and perfectly matched to the theme of the course. You can even listen to the entire soundtrack in the in-game music player, which is a nice touch. Kirby Air Riders takes a simple idea from its 2003 predecessor and turns it into something surprisingly fresh and energetic, even after all these years. The gameplay is fast, chaotic, and absolutely wild. The controls are easy to pick up, though sometimes they still hold the game back a bit, and the road trip story mode doesn't quite hit the same highs. Still, with all the different modes, there's plenty to do, whether you're playing solo or with friends, and once the action starts, it's hard to put down. At $70, it's not the cheapest kart racer out there, but there's a lot of replay value packed in. Chasing all 750 achievements, experimenting with different machines, or messing around with customization options keeps things interesting. Sure, some modes can feel a little repetitive, especially if you're not totally into the chaos, but the game really shines in social play. Playing online or in couch co-op turns up the fun, and even without DLC, there's plenty here to enjoy. It earns a nice 80 out of 100. Honestly, I can see people coming back to this one for years. It's a fun pick up and play game that just works. But what about you? Are you grabbing Kirby Air Riders? Drop your thoughts down below. If you like this review, don't forget to like and subscribe for more news and reviews. This has been Game8. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next one.